You saw it. You heard it. And if you're anything like me, you probably did a double take when those ESPN insiders rolled out their predictions. Because according to that entire panel, the San Francisco 49ers are barely even in the Super Bowl conversation. Out of all those analysts, all those experts, all those so-called insiders, only one picked the Niners to make it to the big game. One. So the question I have for you right now is simple. Is ESPN sleeping on San Francisco? Or are they seeing something the faithful don't want to admit? Drop a quick yes or no in the comments. Are the Niners being underrated? Here's what makes this even more interesting. The NFC West just came off what many are calling one of the most competitive seasons any division has ever had. The Seahawks are coming off a championship run. The Rams are being treated like a sure thing. The division is being hyped as a gauntlet. And somehow, the 49ers, a team that won 12 games despite getting crushed by injuries, despite battling adversity all year, despite playing in that same brutal division, are being framed as an afterthought. That doesn't sit right. Now, let's be fair. The Niners weren't perfect. The offense looked slower at times. The injury report felt like it was sponsored by bad luck. The trenches didn't hold up the way we're used to seeing in big moments. But even with all of that, this team still stacked wins. They still prove they can compete with anybody when healthy. And that's the part one think a lot of these national voices are glossing over. They're projecting forward based on surface-level narratives instead of digging into the context of what actually happened. And if you're tired of the national media brushing past the Niners while hyping up everyone else in the NFC West, you're in the right place. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers here on Niners News, and if you want daily, honest coverage that actually respects what this roster is capable of, hit that subscribe button and help us get there. Let's build the strongest faithful community on YouTube. Because here's what we're about to do next. We're going to break down exactly what those ESPN analysts said, the Super Bowl picks, the MVP choices, the logic behind their predictions, and we're going to separate real insight from lazy assumptions. Some of their takes might actually make sense. Others, you're not going to believe how far off they are. And once you see the full picture, you might feel even stronger about where the Niners truly stand heading into this season. So let's get into what the ESPN panel actually said, because when you look at the full list of predictions, a pattern starts to jump out immediately. The Rams were a popular pick. The Chiefs showed up again and again. The Seahawks got respect as defending champs. The Bills were sprinkled in there. The Chargers even got some love. But the 49ers, one vote. That's it. And what's the logic behind most of those picks? Continuity, quarterback stability, recent momentum, teams that feel close. For the Rams, the argument is that their offense is explosive and experienced. For Kansas City, it's that as long as Patrick Mahomes is breathing, you can't count them out. For Seattle, its defense wins championships. And for Buffalo, it's that Josh Allen is always knocking on the door. Now here's what's interesting. When the panel talked about the Niners, the only insider who picked them pointed to something that should matter more than it apparently does: context. This team dealt with injuries to cornerstone players. Key defensive leaders missed time. The offense wasn't operating at full speed. And yet, they still won 12 games. They still won a playoff game. They still competed in arguably the toughest division football has seen in years. That's not a fluke. That's roster depth and coaching resilience. So why are so many analysts hesitant? I think it comes down to three concerns they won't fully say out. Loud. First, health. The Niners have had injury issues going back multiple seasons. National voices are starting to assume it's a pattern, not bad luck. Second, offensive explosiveness. When the offense slows down or looks older compared to these young, speed-heavy units around the league, it becomes an easy talking point. Third, the trenches. When Seattle controlled the line late in the year, that visual sticks in people's minds. But here's the part that bothers me. Those concerns are real, but they're also fixable. Offensive line upgrades are a personnel decision away. Adding speed is a draft or free agency priority. And pass rush improvement? That's development plus depth, not a complete rebuild. Yet the way some of these predictions were framed, you'd think the Niners are staring at a rebuild instead of a reload. Let me ask you this, which ESPN pick bothered you the most? Was it the Rams being crowned again? The Chiefs getting automatic respect? Or the Seahawks being treated like a dynasty in the making? Drop the team name in the comments and tell me why. Because when you zoom out, the broader message from that panel is clear. The national narrative right now is that the 49ers are good, but not quite elite, dangerous, but flawed, talented, but risky. And if you've watched this team closely, you know that's an oversimplification. And here's the twist that should fire you up. The one analyst who did pick San Francisco pointed directly to what matters most. Adversity creates battle-tested teams. If you can win 12 games when everything feels like it's going wrong, what happens when things finally swing your way? That's the question ESPN didn't lean into. In the next part, we're going to flip the script. We're going to talk about why this roster, as constructed and with a few key adjustments, absolutely has a real path to winning it all, and why the so-called weaknesses might actually turn into strengths if things break right. Here's the part that gets overlooked when these national panels make their picks. They focus on what went wrong, but they don't fully account for what's coming back. And that's where this gets interesting. Because if you really study this roster, there's a legitimate case that the 49ers are closer to another Super Bowl run than most people want to admit. Start on defense. Getting key players healthy changes everything. When your front is anchored by a premier edge rusher and your second level is led by an elite linebacker who can do it all, you're not far from being dominant again. Add in a young defender who flashed real upside in his first year and is now entering year two with experience and recovery behind him, and suddenly that declining defense starts looking more like a unit ready to bounce back. And the hiring of Raheem Morris as defensive coordinator is not a small detail. That's a coach with experience, leadership, and a clear vision. A fresh voice, paired with returning talent, can dramatically shift how this group performs. Now flip to the offense. The most important position in football, locked in. Brock Purdy showed stretches where he played like a top-tier quarterback. Not good, not serviceable, top tier. When protected, when supported, when operating in rhythm, he can absolutely elevate this team. That matters more than almost anything else in the modern NFL. And when you combine a quarterback playing with confidence and a play caller who understands how to manipulate defenses, that's a foundation most franchises are still searching for. But let's not pretend everything is perfect. The offensive line has to be better, period. Interior protection cannot collapse in the biggest moments. If this front office invests properly, whether through the draft or free agency, that alone could raise the ceiling of the entire offense. Then there's speed. The offense needs to get younger and more explosive. Not a total overhaul, but a clear injection of juice. That's a priority, and it's a manageable one. The pass rush also needs more bite. Finishing near the bottom of the league in sacks is not acceptable for a team with championship aspiration. That doesn't mean tearing it down. It means adding depth, creating rotation, and maximizing matchups. If that area improves even moderately, the ripple effect across the defense is massive. Here's the bigger picture. This isn't a team searching for identity. It's a team refining one. They won 12 games in the most competitive division in football. They battled injuries. They still competed. And because they finished third in the division, they get a third-place schedule. That's not nothing. That's an advantage. So let me ask you something. If the Niners fix the offensive line and get even average injury luck this season, are they a legitimate Super Bowl team? Say Super Bowl or not yet in the comments. I want to see where you stand, because this next chapter is about mindset. The national media might not be fully buying in. The panel might have overlooked the upside, but sometimes that's exactly where this franchise thrives, when they're not the trendy pick, when they're not the media darling, when they're the team with something to prove. So what does all of this really mean? It means the noise doesn't matter nearly as much as the work that gets done from this point forward. The national conversation is fun. It's entertaining. It gives us something to react to. But championships aren't won in prediction panels. They're won in roster decisions, in player development, in health management, and in execution when the moment arrives. Right now, the story being told outside the Bay Area is that the 49ers are a tier below the true favorites, that they're talented but flawed, that they're dangerous but unreliable. And honestly, that might be the best thing that can happen. Because when this team plays with an edge, when it feels doubted, when it feels overlooked, that's when you tend to see the sharpest version of them. The path is clear. Upgrade the offensive line so the quarterback isn't under siege in critical stretches. Add speed and youth to an offense that at times looked to step behind the fastest teams in the league. Reignite the pass rush so opposing quarterbacks aren't getting comfortable. And most importantly, stay healthy. If those boxes are checked, This isn't some miracle run scenario. It's a legitimate contender blueprint. And let's not forget the schedule. Dynamic. Finishing third in the division means facing a third-place schedule. That's a subtle but meaningful advantage. Stack early wins, build momentum, get healthy at the right time, and suddenly the entire narrative flips. The same analysts who left the Niners off their Super Bowl ballots would be the first ones saying, "We should have seen this coming. Here's where I stand." ESPN might not be completely wrong to question certain areas, but writing off a 12-win team that survived injuries and still found ways to compete, that feels premature. This roster isn't broken. It's unfinished. And there's a big difference between those two things. Now, I want your final take. If you had to vote right now, simple choice, either for Niners make the Super Bowl or B they fall short again. Drop A or B in the comments and give me one sentence why. I'm genuinely curious where the faithful stands on this. And if you believe this team is being overlooked, help us build the loudest Niners community out there. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers and every single one matters. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and like the video so more fans see it. If you want a full breakdown of realistic free agency and draft targets that could put this team over the top, type free agents below. If enough of you ask for it, that's the next video.